So to begin with, Josh, I'm going to jump right in.
Cool.
Um, we have a little, we have a 30-minute window, and I'm just going to start with, can you give us a quick rundown? What is Copilot? I mean, AI is
Yeah,
the conversation of the town, right? Everybody's talking
right.
about it. Chat GPT, Copilot,
hmm
lots of others. What is Copilot?
Yeah. Copilot is, very similar to what ChatGPT is. Many people are familiar with how to use ChatGPT already. But imagine, a seamless integration with your Microsoft 365 apps, whether you're using Word, Excel, or Outlook. Makes it super easy for users to adopt without a steep learning curve. Um, Obviously the main benefits of it are, some of the security best practices. Imagine, being able to keep all of the information that's within your tenant private. You're not uploading it to, have AI learn from others. Obviously you want to make sure that all the information that's on your tenant stays secure and is not being shared out. But yeah, you have full access to your Copilot within all of your apps. For instance, I use it on my Teams meetings pretty frequently because I'm in, back-to-back meetings throughout the day. So being able to run transcriptions is one of the main uses that I use at least. And then I even do like, an overview of the conversation we have. I'll do like a recap afterwards and even ask it for me to be like, hey, I was supposed to follow up with so and so. What resources was I supposed to send over? It sends me a little reminder and stuff like that.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about kind of what is the, I mean, I like what you said because it's not just AI, but it's AI that's kind of contained within your organizational's data.
Right.
Maybe can you expound on that a little bit more on how that can be leveraged kind of day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's basically like an advanced search tool as well. So whether you're pulling information from your SharePoint, your OneDrive, your Teams, or your email, you can pull information from inside of your tenant. So you have the option to go from work or web. Um, excuse me. When you're in your work mode, you can pull things that are specifically within your tenant. And if you want to, you can switch that to the web version and you can pull information from, the internet. But being able to pull information from your own tenant allows you to pull in from documents that, are already inside of your tenant. That makes sense.
Okay. And this is a question that I have that, how can it really help with, I mean, do you have any examples around managing email? Because we get a ton of email, right? And I get flooded with emails. Are there any practical tips or applications for email management somehow and using and leveraging a, Copilot for that?
Yeah, I would say so. That's probably something that I can probably better utilize. I use Copilot pretty frequently to help me answer questions. Sometimes there are some pretty complicated Microsoft questions that people come to me for. Luckily, Copilot is pretty good at pulling in Microsoft information and documentation. But ways that you can use Copilot to, manage your emails. Let's say, for instance, when you first wake up in the morning and you've got like 30 emails, you can say, hey, real quick, can you give me a summary of the emails in my inbox right now and kind of rank them as like top priority and which ones I really need to get to? That's a good way to kind of just get an understanding of like which emails do I really need to get to first thing this morning versus something I can maybe get to, later in the afternoon. Um, also being able to even draft and respond with Copilot. You
So you
can come up with, sorry, go ahead.
no, so you're saying draft emails
hmm
for responding to those emails?
Right. Yep.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm interested. That's piqued my interest.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Whether you can basically say like, hey, this is what I'm trying to respond with, or you can just say, hey, can you help me respond to this email? And it'll do it for you, depending on how complicated it is. Um, I could probably be better about doing that myself, but I mean, I use Copilot separately sometimes just for answering portions of emails. But you're going to have that Copilot button available in all of your apps, including your email. So you can quickly say like, hey, help me respond to this email, etc. And even if you need help with scheduling or follow-ups or even insights, that's another thing that Copilot's great for too.
Okay. Well, one of the big concerns that we get all the time, it was one of the first questions, is what about security and privacy?
Hmm.
And what's some concerns around that, and how is it managed or mitigated within that Copilot and your tenant environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so obviously, the big difference between Copilot and ChatGPT is, sharing that data and learning off of it. So when you upload your information to ChatGPT, technically that information can be used to learn off of and share it with others. Obviously, that's not something that you always are going to want, especially if you're dealing with sensitive data as a company. Um, so being able to keep all that secure into your own tenant is ideal. Um, so, it has zero trust principles. So basically, always authenticating and authorizing based off of user credentials. And then, for instance, even if you are using Copilot in your tenant, what we typically recommend is that, users have it set up with a business premium licensing. The business premium licensing is going to help you being able to add things like sensitivity labels to your documents in your OneDrive or SharePoint, making sure that, only the people who have the right eyes can actually view this information. Obviously, you can imagine, releasing AI into a tenant. And if you don't have those things set up correctly, imagine someone saying like, "Hey, what's the social security number of so and so?" Or, "Hey, how much does my boss make?" So those
So,
can be a little problematic. Obviously, you want to avoid those types of things if you can.
so what you're saying is you can't just open it up and say, "Here you go," and it's magic, and
Right.
there's some preparation and planning that goes
Yes.
ahead
Yeah,
into
absolutely.
it. Oh,
Yeah, it's
oh
typically
man.
what we recommend is, implementing the security best practices first, including, getting them set up with business premium. And then once everything's been set up correctly, then you can, have Copilot. Typically what we recommend is like a slow rollout. Starting off with some like maybe management or, maybe CEO, et cetera. Getting them started with it so they can see, how it helps them increase their levels of productivity. And then once they understand that, pushing it down to the rest of the stream.
So that's that you've touched on something that's um, I think important too, because a lot of times, like with Chat GPT or some of these others, we kind of just jump right in and start using it.
Right.
So with Copilot, it sounds like it's definitely got to be more intentional, like
Hmm.
as mentioned, a little bit more planning into it, and we can't just go, hey, I'm going to go get a Copilot license and turn it on and where you're rocking and
Right.
rolling.
To
Um,
some degree, yeah, I would agree. There does take a little bit more planning and preparation when it comes to, the security side of things.
but when you say slow roll it, I mean either by individual adoption as well as like users, but it sounds like we can also have, I mean, day one, it will still work for some stuff. We can still let it do some stuff. It's
Right.
just we have to kind of open it up bit by bit in
Right.
in how you're leveraging and using it and what, like you said, hey, how much does my boss make? Or
Yeah,
what's the social security number of this person? Because that's for the,
exactly.
I think a lot of everybody's concern is, well, what information is it going to have access to?
Right.
And who's going to have access to what?
Yeah, I mean, it really is basically going to be able to pull it from everything within your tenant. So if you don't have, your documentation set up correctly in your OneDrive or SharePoint, and you don't have those sensitivity labels turned on, or if you don't have even something like MFA, imagine someone, hacks into one of those users and now they have full access to your tenant. Um, you know, we want to make sure that those security best practices are set up in place so, they can't even get into the hacking portion of it, let alone, if they did, they're not going to be granted full access to your tenant.
So doesn't Microsoft have a kind of a readiness Copilot readiness tool or not? Yeah, isn't there something to help with kind of that readiness?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have some documentation that we send out to our partners when it comes to best practices. Copilot, or sorry, Microsoft has their own resources as well. I think Pax8 resources are usually a little bit easier to navigate, but Microsoft does have some good articles on kind of best practices in general.
Okay. And what's some of the, tell me as far as a little bit more around, I guess let's just think of, I'm thinking of well, I'm thinking of some of the others. ChatGPT is one, obviously a big one, but one of the things that also is that we deal with a lot is, garbage in, garbage out. And
Hmm.
how can we leverage and maximize, the quality of the data that we have so we can get uh, better outputs?
Hmm.
Or potentially maybe specifically around the prompting. How do we better prompt or leverage it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does take some practice. It's not as simple as, Googling something. I think the more you're comfortable with prompting, the better responses you're going to be getting. You kind of have to be specific in what you're looking for. Because at the end of the day, AI in general is kind of just looking to give you the right answer or the answer that you're looking for. And sometimes that can be a little generic. So the more specific you are with your prompting, the better answers you're going to get. I have another, my secondary job as well that I use Copilot for. I have my own business where I like fabricate things in my workshop in my backyard. So like I use it on a day-to-day basis to help me come up with designs or even help me come up with social media posts and stuff like that. So the more it knows about you and what you're about, it'll give you better responses as well. So the more information that you feed it, the better it can understand where you're coming from and how to answer those questions as well. I definitely think it takes practice to get good at prompting, especially like to find exactly what you're looking for. Um, but it's definitely something that you can learn to do and eventually be pretty good at.
Okay. Is there anything that has kind of had been a wow factor that you've seen across the board that a lot of adopters have really liked?
Doctors?
Not doctors, adopters, like people who
Oh,
have adopted
adopters.
and who started using it. Like,
I mean, I would just say in general, just like little time savings here and there. It's not going to be a crazy amount of time saving, but at the end of the day, depending on how much you're getting paid on an hourly or a salary basis, you really only have to save yourself an hour or two a month for it to financially make sense. And obviously, your time is worth a lot. So I mean, the more time that you can get back in your day to do things that you find are more valuable. I think that's the biggest use case here is just really, allowing you to focus on more things that you find productive. So you don't have to do these tasks that take up a lot of time. Whether it's responding to emails or like for instance, I'm in back-to-back calls throughout the day. It's easy for me to forget what types of meetings I've even been doing. So to do like a quick recap on a Teams meeting that I had yesterday or the day prior, when one of my colleagues follows up with me and said, "Hey, how'd that call go?" And I'm like, uh, man, I really don't know. I can go back and it can really cover my butt and be like, "Oh, yeah, this is what we covered. I followed up with these resources and we have a follow-up call next week." If I had to remember all of that, that just takes up so much mental capacity that, I really can't afford to do. So I really think that, that's some of the biggest things there is to really think of it as like having your own personal assistant sometimes. It really does help, save up mental space that you can focus on more important things in life.
I really like that too, because oftentimes as we get busy and there's a lot going on, it's
Right.
easier for things to slip through the cracks. Things aren't
Exactly.
followed up on or
Hmm.
we forgot something. And so even just having a system or some automation to help us manage all that data. I mean, we're inundated with data and information, right?
Yes. It's
And
exhausting
so
sometimes, right?
it is. What would you say that is the learning curve as far as using as just an individual user, Copilot?
I would say, it's pretty quick. they gave us Copilot when it was first released, maybe like a month or two afterwards. And, we've already been kind of using it like I was using ChatGPT before I was even using Copilot just because that's what resources I had available to me. Um, but it was pretty quick for me at least. But I think even if someone who doesn't have much experience with it, it's similar to like being able to ask, you go on Google or Bing and you're looking for something specific, the more specific you are with what you're looking for and your prompting, I think the better responses you're going to get. So I think it is a relatively quick, turnaround time of like, oh, cool, I'm like already seeing benefits of using this. And obviously, you can go on YouTube and be like, hey, get some better ideas of what you can really use it for. Microsoft also has some great, resources regarding, how to best utilize it. But I think you're going to learn a lot from others as well. So take advantage of those resources, whether you're learning on YouTube or other articles or forums out there. Um, but I think it's pretty easy. You can even use Copilot to help you learn more about Copilot. Hey, what types, like, how can I better prompt you to give me better responses, et cetera? And it's going to pull those resources from online, and you can quickly, take those into immediate action.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. I was pretty amazed the other day when I did some testing, and what I asked was that, hey, can you kind of give me a comparison of these things and then write up a document, a summary document, 1 to 2 pages.
Hmm.
And man, I was so impressed. And it
Yes.
was something
Hmm.
that normally that I would spend, I don't know how much time on it. And
Right.
is it AI generated? Yeah. I mean, I don't care. I mean, in the end, the it was well written, well put together, and I was super
Hmm.
excited and well formatted too.
Right.
So for me, that was, I mean, it saved me a ton of time just in that one thing. And so I know
Yeah.
I've been using uh, it more and more and more, and just finding more just little jewels and little benefits. Like, man,
Hmm.
this is fantastic, and just getting
Right.
excited about that. So
Yeah, I mean, I think as especially for small businesses and people who don't have a lot of resources readily available to them, like I said, like I'm a solo one-man shop over here on my other business. I have to wear many hats. I have to take care of marketing. I have to take care of sales. I have to take care of design. I don't have the resources to hire out for that necessarily. So I think, a smaller business really can take advantage of this to their fullest. Really just think about it as, having another person that's like working with you and knows pretty much everything about you if you're, uploading that types of information. So really being able to take advantage of the resources that you have available to you to increase your levels of productivity is the goal of Copilot, really.
so how do you suggest somebody get started with this uh, Copilot?
Obviously, getting them set up correctly with licensing is kind of the step one. After that, a slow rollout, maybe starting with one or two licenses on the tenant first, getting people familiar with how to best utilize it. We have some resources that we typically send out to partners for best practices and stuff like that, depending on what types of field you're in. Um, but I mean, just start playing around with it. I mean, if you think of something that you should be, Googling or whatever, maybe try using it in Copilot first to see what types of information you're coming from. Because if it is going to pull from multiple resources at the same time, and if you'd like, you can always, dive deeper into those resources specifically. It's always going to have links for you to follow up on. And obviously, you can be like, hey, can you expand a little bit more in, this field, blah, blah, blah. But I think just like starting is a good place to to go into it really. Obviously, it is a financial um what's the word I'm looking for here? Investment. Um, but like, like I said, if you're saving yourself anywhere from an hour to 2 hours a month, it's probably going to pay for itself pretty quickly. So that's really all you have to think about it. Just start messing around with it and start playing with it. Um, and I'm sure you'll find, ways that you can help increase your levels of productivity.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today, Josh, and being able to have this conversation and kind of go over what the introduction around Copilot and what it can do for us. I have another just couple more quick questions, and
Hmm.
before we wrap up our time, one
Of
is
course.
so just for clarity, I mean, because we talked about Copilot having access to your own company data, and
Right.
then the necessity of going through and ensuring that we have the permissions or access correctly assigned for different users within the organization, right?
Right.
So Copilot for a small business is probably less inherently risk than for maybe big business, a big organization that has lots of data sprawl all over.
Right.
Um, but but so Copilot will also go out to the internet too, right? So
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
leverages anything out on the internet as well as our own data, so it can kind of tie some of that stuff together.
Right. Yeah. You'll have the option to switch back and forth between work and web. So it really depends kind of where you want that information to be pulling from. So if I have something in my OneDrive or email or Teams, I'll probably just go to my work field and specifically look there. But if I'm looking for resources outside of my tenant, that's when I would probably switch over to the web version.
Okay, excellent. Is there any other final thoughts that you think would be beneficial to our attendees today?
Hmm. I would say just jump into it. I think for a while now, the cost of Copilot is probably the biggest jump for a lot of people. Um, it's not cheap. Let's just call it what it is. It's not necessarily cheap when it comes to like you're comparing it the licensing costs. But if you can really switch your mindset of thinking about how to increase your levels of productivity and get more time back in your day, really try to think about how much more valuable that is to you. So if you can get that time back, really think about, what else you could be doing with that time to be more valuable in your life.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time today, Josh. We'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Of
And
course.
thank you for those of you who attended and listened in today. Please subscribe and like. And as well as if you have any questions, you can contact us at connect@teknologize.com. My name is Byron Martin. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And thank you again, Josh, from Pax8, our awesome partner that we work with all the time for a lot of different things. Really appreciate you contributing today. So